your objective, your target, the timing with which you want to hit that target, your budget, and your expectations, because you want to set up that recipe for success ahead of time.
All right, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Middleton Methods podcast. This week, we have another treat, another bonus interview with my good friend, John Cristadoro. I say your last name right? Cristadoro?
You did. You didn't slaughter it.
Such a smooth last name.
Absolutely. So many vowels.
We're going to be talking about advertising, marketing, but not like you've heard us talk about in the past, either with some topics that I've talked about or other interviews that we've done specifically on Facebook ads. John runs an agency out of Atlanta that works with some of the biggest brands. So, a lot of times you hear about marketing and branding as if they're synonymous. And I don't know how you feel, but I feel like branding is a different animal, but that's changing. We're going to talk about that in this week's episode. So I know a lot of our audience is more small business owners, entrepreneurs, but there's a lot of key takeaways that I know John and I have discussed that you can take into your business. So I want you to kind of get behind the scenes. Like I said, this is a real treat to be able to hear from a business owner who works with, the Heinekens, the Aaron's, these massive companies that spend gajillions of dollars. So before we get into that, John, why don't you give us a quick recap? How did you even get into this business in the first place? And just start us off there.
Well, it's funny. So I lived in Southern California, and at the time I was marketing director for a web-based home finding service, westsiderentals.com, who's now been acquired by apartments.com. And I was working with one of the sales managers for the local radio station, the CBS station with the Dodge Radio Network. And one thing led to another. He recruited me and he sold me the dream. He said, you should be selling radio. And I'm like, well, why not? So after a period of 6 to 8 months, he convinced me to jump over, and it was an eye-opening experience. CBS, which has merged with Intercom, but it's just a massive Goliath in the marketplace. It opened up different avenues. So I started working for KFWB, News 980, and the Dodge Radio Network. And through that, I formed a great relationship with Justin Schafflander, who's the VP or the GM, I should say, for the Southeast for what's now iHeartMedia. He came out to Atlanta and picked up the phone and said, hey, listen, I want my best guy to come out to Atlanta with me. So I was given the opportunity to take my family and move him out to the East Coast. And that was great. It was great to sit and work with clients, but my goal then was to sell them radio. So I would sit there and do the needs analysis and try to figure out, okay, how can I position this in a manner with which they would see value in one or more of these radio stations? You should spend X amount of dollars and so on and so forth. And I had a lot of success with that, but in the back of my mind, I always had this burning need to be an entrepreneur, to control my own destiny, if you will. The grass is always greener, right, Brandon?
Right.
So I took the leap back in 2012, and I said, you know what, I'm going to go for it. And ironically enough, though, my intention was not to build an agency. My intention was to replicate the home finding model that I was running before I even got into media altogether. I thought if we can take that same model and drop it in a major metro like Atlanta, it would be super successful. At the time, we were selling between 5,000 and 10,000 memberships at $60 a piece a month. So I thought, wow, I want to jump into that game. So I made my first mistake. I opened 2 companies at once, which I would never, ever, ever suggest. There's not enough time.
I would say it's like chasing 2 rabbits.
Exactly. Squirrel. So I opened the web-based home finding service. I knew it was going to take a couple of years to build consumer confidence and convince them they should pay for access to information that's otherwise free on Craigslist and apartmentguide.com and what have you. And so I said, what do I know in the short term that can pay my mortgage, feed my kids, and still keep living? And I said, so I'm doing this consulting and actually selling on the radio side. Let me see if I can sit and have my Jerry Maguire moment and convince some of these clients to let me do their media. I know it pretty well. I've been doing it for a long time. I do sponsorships and what have you. So I did. I sat with a couple clients. I convinced them. I said, listen, if I can promise you that your rates won't go up on the radio station, and I would still manage and implement that, would you be willing to transfer your business to me? And they said, sure. So year 1 was good. Year 2, again, eating rice and beans. And so then I came to the point with my web company that it was time for round 2 funding. Well, That's always fun. And the growth had sort of stagnated. So I came to the conclusion that I have to shut one of them down. I should have done it earlier. And I just dedicated full time with the agency. And then, over the last 5 years or so, we've evolved into doing a multitude of different services for clients out of necessity.
Awesome. Yeah, I love your story. Before we get into the action, I want to talk more specifically about what your company does.
Sure.
But a lot of our listeners are at, a lot of the ones that I've spoken to personally are at a place where they do have a good job, right? They work for a big company. They're probably close to, if not over the 6-figure mark, right? That's like a milestone.
Yep.
And it can be super scary to leave that and start your own thing. So one of the things we usually tell people is either one, real estate's usually like a really great equalizer. Just about anybody can get into real estate without having a bunch of past skills. But the other is to start your own business. And we usually advise in consulting because you are obviously worth some, high value in your previous company.
Yep.
And so if you can just do that, consult with businesses on your own, then now you have a consulting agency. It's one of the easiest, I think, businesses to start. So can you tell me a little bit about like how did it, what made you take that leap of faith? And if anyone's sitting there like, comfortable, but also a little uncomfortable thinking, I'm ready, I want to make that change, but what was going through your head at the time and how did you overcome and finally make that decision to just say, screw it, let's do it?
A lot of
you had a family then, or was it just you and your wife then, or did you have?
No, I had 2 children. I had 2 children, as a matter of fact. I have right now, my daughter is 9 and my son's 7. I left and started my company in 2012. So again, they were both born. And, to answer your question, it was a lot of conversations with my wife. My wife has been my rock, my foundation, my support. She was with me when I left the web company and went to radio. Then she was with me when I took her 9 months pregnant, I might add, from LA to Atlanta to a place where she had never even visited. And just to add to that, my wife is from Poland. English is her second language. She's only been in the country for about 10 years. 12 years. We've been married 11. And so again, it was that leap of faith, and it was just the support. But from a financial perspective, you're right. I was making $300,000 a year. I was the number 1 biller in the cluster. But there was just this burning desire. Everyone has their own motivations, but there was a burning desire to sort of build my own legacy for my kids. One of the things in sales, no matter what you're selling, from radio to toothbrushes, if you can sell, you're good, right?
Yeah.
Your point about property, my grandmother, who did very well for herself, always said, real estate, real estate, real estate. She taught me it's location, 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 and so on and so forth, right? I didn't necessarily know enough about that to invest in that, but obviously that makes sense. But with regards to sales, I came to the conclusion that, you know what, if I can sell and you provide a service that works for customers, then it doesn't matter what you're selling. So worst case scenario, and I'll tell you that I'll tell you a little bit more about it in a second, but worst case scenario, if the company unfortunately fails, I'll jump back into sales. Now, not everyone has that opportunity, and I understand that. But it's just a leap of faith, and it's not for everyone, for every person, because a lot of my interactions are with media reps, radio, TV, billboard, digital, what have you. And we work with these companies, and they're like, man, I would love to do what you do, but I just don't have the cojones, right? Generally, you have the 2 types. You've got the ones that are sitting on top of the hill that are making a lot of money, have benefits, and they don't want to upset the apple cart. And then you got the people on the low end of the totem pole that are just getting by, and they don't quite honestly have the relationship to build something like this anyway. So you've got to find that right person. And it just took that leap of faith. Thank goodness, knock on wood, it's working for me right now. I constantly live in a position where all of my clients might fire me tomorrow. You never know, but you got to keep along and evolving.
No, I think it's important. You said you got the buy-in and support from your wife. You didn't just say, I'm the man in the house, I'm making the decision, you go with it at all, right? That would have been
worked that way, right?
That's good. And to speak to sales, do you have any favorite books or favorite trainings that you've used? Because like you said, from radio to toothbrushes, it doesn't matter what you are. There's a lot of people can have a negative connotation to sales, but sales is just communication, right? It's just being really good at conveying a message and hearing the customer's needs and being able to provide that. So I definitely want you to be another example of how important it is to always work on those skills of sales communication. So do you have any favorites?
That's what it is. Well, my old boss and mentor, he put a book in my head called The Purple Cow, and it's a different.
Okay. Is that Seth Godin, right?
I don't remember. It was so long ago. I'm sure it is, and I don't want to act like I know. But I'm now going on to the podcast and the audiobooks because I'm really lazy, and that's. But yeah, no. And to your point, though, sales. What, in my opinion, what people confuse as that's what causes a negative connotation tied to sales is the salesperson is pushy and is a talker versus a listener, right? Mm-hmm. If you identify a need for that customer, whether it's for their business, whether it's their teeth, if you're selling a toothbrush and you provide a solution to their need, it doesn't matter. A lot of the salespeople, in my opinion, I've trained a lot of them before. It's like you talk, and in essence, puke on the person's shoes versus listen, and then provide a solution. Yeah. So it doesn't matter, and in our business, it was a breath of fresh air because I came from the sales side to the consulting side. And what I mean is before I would sit with Brandon Middleton and he owns a business and I would convince you, or try to at least, why you should buy my radio station. I've got all these great radio stations and 1 million people a week listen and their average, household income is 75,000. Didn't you tell me you want to target people making 75,000? And I try to convince you that that's why you needed to do it. Whereas now we may or may not do radio. We might do out of home. We might do digital. We do a lot of sponsorships or affiliate market, whatever the case may be. It's more about listening and trying to formulate a solution for that specific need. Whether it's, and as you talked about when you first started, it's broken down from a marketing or media perspective into two initiatives, either a to-do, which is a direct response, or a to-believe, which is simply branding. And I think that right now, out of necessity, brands are evolving to have at least some cohesive combination of the two versus one or another,
Can you elaborate on that a little bit more, like with an example?
Sure.
I think people brush over that.
So, for instance, when we worked with Coca-Cola and we helped them launch their freestyle machine in Atlanta, right? Their initiative, you're not trying to tell someone, hey, you're thirsty, go buy a Coke. That's a direct response. I'm telling you to do something or think something. So therefore, as a result, you'll do something. Mm-hmm. No, it's the next time you're thirsty, think of us. We offer options and solutions. That's a branding campaign, right?
Got it.
So it's just top of mind awareness, and brands spend millions upon millions, or as you said, gajillions of dollars trying to influence the way someone feels or thinks about a brand. Whereas a direct response is, and that's generally a lot of the businesses are. For instance, with working with Heineken, everyone thinks that you've got marketing dollars and they're these millions and millions of dollars and they're going to spend them and have no ROI analysis tied to it, right? We hope that we sell more beer. But they're now rolled up, their marketing department is rolled up under sales. And what does that mean? For every marketing dollars that's spent, they need to move a case, or theoretically, right? Mm-hmm. So their initiatives that we roll out for them is trying to incentivize the consumer or the account to take in more product and thus sell more beer. In the case of Aaron's, they want more door swings. If we tell people about the rent-to-own business and why you should consider Aaron's, they want the doors to swing versus, oh, it's great, you're a lucky dog. That's not going to convert because at the end of the day, it's bottom line.
Yeah.
Who you're reporting to, there's a bottom line. So
why do you think that big brands did spend millions and millions on just branding without having that ROI for so many years? Because you're saying the market's basically changing, right?
Absolutely.
What a small business owner and entrepreneur has always had to do with direct response and say, hey, if I'm going to spend $1, my budgets are tight. I need to make sure I'm going to make $1 plus back. I'm going to acquire a customer.
Sure.
But big brands, seem to be able to just, buy $1 million Super Bowl ad and maybe it'll sell more, maybe it won't. Why is that changing? And why was it that way for so long?
Out of necessity, right? And I think so. Two things. One, there's so many different mediums out there, so many places that people can receive their content, right? Whether it's TV or radio or whatever the case may be. Very rarely do I even watch TV anymore, and I make a living,
right?
Monetizing, right? So I'm either on my iPad when my wife is watching House Hunters International in the background, those types of things, right? And so again, they had to evolve because right now there's an instant report as to whether it's working or not, specifically in the digital space. I think I'm a big proponent of a good media mix, but to your point, back in the day, and I say back in the day, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, we had that little recession, if you will. And there's a lot of eyeballs now looking at bottom lines. Are we going to do this budget? What is the ROI in this? Can we trim here? Whatever the case is. And invariably, no matter how large or small the company is, it's like, okay, we spent $1, we saw results. That's great. We'll keep it. We spent $2. We may or may not have seen a result. That's where it gets cut. So they want trackability. We do strategic analysis for instance, when we're doing a sponsorship for Sprint. Sprint, they want to be on site. They want to feel as though they're touching the customer. Now, they're spending millions of dollars in TV and those types of things. But the business we're trying to affect is that DR interaction. So we identify different events for them to be on site. We work with Sprint tags, so Tennessee, Alabama, Georgia. And so we identify different ways for their salespeople to be on site at a Monster Jam event or at a home shopping party, or whatever the case may be, so they can say, okay, Mr. and Mrs. Advertiser, you should look at this. This is a really cool phone, so on and so forth. They spent $2,000. You ought to be there. And they had 65 contracts, right? And so that's a direct measurable result as a result tied to the funds. So, but to your point, it's just out of necessity. No longer are their money being thrown away willy-nilly,
So how is the consumer changing, right? I mean, before there was that much digital and it was just TV, radio, billboards, is the consumer just that much more distracted, or is the consumer just have that many more options, or are they taking longer to make buying decisions?
It all depends. So it's funny. I wish there was sort of a quick answer to that. So we ask 5 questions when we sit with our clients. Your objective, your target, the timing with which you want to hit that target, your budget, and your expectations, because you want to set up that recipe for success ahead of time. So the objective is to do or to believe, and then we nail down that even more specifically. It's like, for instance, Aaron's, we're consulting for Aaron's now because they've got a Store of the Future concept in San Marcos, Texas, that they're going to be launching. So we're building some things about that. So the objective is to spread awareness about this Store of the Future and try to convince the ever elusive millennial that they should consider their brand, right?
Uh-huh.
So that's their objective. Their target is that specific demo. Before, the money demo was adults 25-54. That's a big, wide range. But brands are more in tune with, let's really focus or identify the cells within that 25-54 demo. Is it male? Is it female? Is it lower economic status? Is it higher? Whatever the case may be. So to your point, it all depends on who you're trying to target. The timing, because obviously business is cyclical, depending on what that is. The budget is the budget. And then the expectations. I spent $10,000 targeting this demo with this objective. At the end of the campaign, did I sell? Did I not? Did I move cases? Whatever the case may be. But to your original point is, I think if you're talking about the millennial, and I hate to use this term, but you're right. They have so many more choices, but more importantly, they get a bad rap because supposedly they're just not brand loyal, right? And so again, you just want the best opportunity to get best given time, and then if it provides a solution to my need right then and it's cost effective, I'll do it. Whereas my parents, I'll tell you right now, I only eat Jiffy cornbread.
Really?
I say it's because I like the way it tastes, but let's be realistic. My mom, that's all she fixed was Jiffy cornbread because it's sweet, right? And she wouldn't think or dare go outside of Jiffy or Tide or whatever. And I think that was the power of the marketing at that time, and then the mindset. Now it's like, all right, what's in it for me right now, and how do I convert at the best cost per unit, right?
Okay. So those 5 questions: objective, target, timing, budget, expectations. How can a small business owner, entrepreneur, let's say who's an author or sells a service or has a digital product or training that they sell online.
Sure.
What advice would you give them, or how could you help them with those 5 questions? Should they look at it exactly the way Heineken or Coca-Cola does? Is there any tweaks or adjustments for someone who has a smaller budget, or is it?
It's not contingent on your budget. Those questions have nothing to do with budget. It's just you can do more or less based on your budget. Heineken, their objective is never to get more people to drink more beer. It's never that obtuse, right? It's more narrow. So, for instance, we're working right now on the Heineken After Work program, and we're launching a happy hour concept on behalf of Heineken in Baltimore, DC, Charlotte, Raleigh, Atlanta. And their whole objective is to identify that male 21 to 28-year-old consumer that's a man of the world, so to speak, a young professional, what have you. And so they have a specific budget tied to this specific initiative that's tied to this objective, right? Their objective is to increase consideration, both on the account side, which is the bar, and the consumer side, which is obviously the man of the world, to associate a good experience with drinking the Heineken product, right? So again, what I'd say to that is just be specific. Know what you're really good at and do it well. The problem is you try to offer too many solutions and have too many SKUs and have too many things. And if you've got too many dollars, you can do that. But we're speaking to the person that would really keep a keen eye on those expenditures. It all depends on who you talk to. They say, okay, your gross revenues are X. You should dedicate 5 to 10% of that in marketing. And it depends on the cost of good or service. And there's a lot of different variables, and I'm no expert. But that's generally how you back into sort of setting that budget, because that's the fourth out of the fifth question. So to your point, I would say if you're the entrepreneur and trying to identify what your objective, target, timing, budget, and expectation is, pick something that you're really good at, identify where your consumer is, and then maximize that in any way you can, whether you're using someone to help, or a lot of times you're just doing things on social media. You're doing paid ads, you're doing this, that, and the other. Just be very specific.
I know a lot of times I hear entrepreneurs say that my product can fit all these different niches, or my product's for everybody.
Sure.
Everyone could use this. Do you have any tips on targeting, or how do you help your clients who maybe they have multiple targets? Do you create multiple campaigns? Do you help them better understand their objectives so maybe they can ignore some of those other targets? If that entrepreneur is thinking about, all right, well, I have an idea, but it seems like a pretty wide niche. How do I get more specific?
Yes, you do split testing, but more importantly, understand the difference between your target customer and your actual customer, right? So again, you might want to sell the Mercedes, but you've got Fords, and Fords are good, right? And those make the cash registers ring. But that's the problem. It's like, no, but I can sell to this, or I can sell to that. Okay, well, let's find out who's buying your product or service, or who you think is going to most affect directly. And then focus on that. And then everything else is sort of ancillary or icing on the cake. So yes, you're right. And the second thing is get unbiased opinions. And that's where consultants come in, or friends, or whatever. Because if you're an entrepreneur and you firmly believe you've made that leap, and you're like, whatever my product or service that I'm going to offer is so awesome, I'm going to leave my 6-figure job and my benefits, and I'm going to strike out my own. You're so connected emotionally that theoretically anyone can buy it. I know that I'm a business coach for executives, but I can sell my thing to a guy in McDonald's because he wants to be an executive one day. No, man. You know what I'm saying? It's just those types of things. Just really identify where your opportunity is and get unbiased feedback.
Awesome. Is there anything else that do you have any case studies on some of these big brands, just to kind of continue to get a peek behind the curtain of maybe some campaigns that you're running or about to launch right now? Or
Well, it's funny that you said that, because someone just called me, the regional marketing manager for Raleigh. So Tecate is a Heineken brand, and if you'll see this,
I didn't know that.
Yeah, well, Heineken is the second largest beer company in the world. We do programs. We just finished up the college football program because they've got Dos Equis. Tecate is one of their brands. They've got a ton. The flagship brand is Heineken. So we're getting ready to roll out and launch the Tecate initiative tied to both Hispanics and general market consumers. And it's all occasion-based. It's going to be food-based. So they want to pair it with the grill, carne asada, the meat. You know, you've got the boxer and for whatever reason, he slipped my mind, but Triple G in Canelo's the boxer. So right now we're identifying different ways to sort of get the message out there and associate with the upcoming fight on Cinco and in September. So we're trying to identify, back to the original question. So we've got a budget, right? And so what do we do with this budget? We identify what we like to say is working versus non-working dollars. And the working dollar is the dollars that we spend to push the initiative. The non-working dollar is the cost that it takes to secure a sponsorship or spots or whatever the case is. And so right now we're trying to identify certain venues that we can get instant consideration for by sponsoring their events, and as a result, they'll feature the product. And then certain media companies that will push awareness. And then you have the consumer engagement piece where you give the register to win the experience with you and your family at your home with Tecate and carne asada. So again, be willing to be nimble and adjust. Know what you're trying to do, stick through it, but don't be afraid to call your own baby ugly, because you have to change course, and you have to change course. You'd rather do that than be stubborn and spend a bunch of money in a losing effort.
Yeah, I hope you guys are hearing this. I like to tell a lot of entrepreneurs who have great product, great business, great service, but frankly, they're terrible marketers. And I tell them all the time, you're getting beat. You know, it's easy to point the finger and say, oh, but this person doesn't have, you know, this competitor who's crushing it. Their thing isn't as good as mine, or their service isn't as good as mine. Yeah, but they are being calculated like crazy with all of their marketing. And just to hear you, you know, I think I know I did for years. I just thought that the big brands bought TV, radio, and billboards, and that was pretty much it. But when you're talking about these initiatives and consideration, what I am realizing is they're very intentional about and very specific about what they're spending their marketing dollars on, to the point that, you know, it's not just sponsoring an event and putting your logo up on the wall. It's, you know, it's like it's creating an experience. Like, I've always wondered if you go to a bar and they're giving out, you know, free stuff by, you know, one of these companies, or they're at a game and they're taking pictures for you for free, you know, in the front row, you know, or backstage. They're doing all this stuff. These big brands are doing it, and you're like, I don't have to pay for any of this. No, because their logo's on it, and they're helping to associate what you're consuming with the experience you're having. And I hope you guys are hearing just how important this is, because if the big brands are doing it, I mean, that's what you have to, as a small business owner, you can take that same stuff, I guess. What's an example of how someone can do that on a smaller level? Obviously, a small business owner isn't going to, you know, rent out a stadium or maybe get into some of these huge events, but what are some things that they can do in their local markets?
Yeah. Well, that's a good point. So the case studies and the examples that I've mentioned are all big brands that we all can understand and not relate to, but know who they are. Now, one of the other clients that we're working with right now, they're not a small brand. They've got 7 locations, but they're a local brand, local orthodontics company, and their company is known as Braces. And they're I don't want to say big box, but they have scale, so the ability to compete with a pricing model is easier for them. But again, they have finite budgets. They just went through a merger and acquisition. They were acquired by North American Dental Group, which is a major company. But now their assets are rolled up in the state of Georgia for this national company. And so they've got a smaller budget, obviously. But one way that they would do something that we're currently doing right now is we're doing the traditional stuff. We're doing social, we're doing the digital, we're doing some retargeting, we're doing some audience lookalike campaigns. But one of the things they want to do is a cause marketing angle. And if you
say that again,
cause marketing, because that's a big angle, right? And so we aligned with Special Olympics Georgia, and they spent some dollars to do that. And then they took that partnership and brought it to the public, you know, brought awareness about it to the public, because it's not just a feel good. It's like, listen, we're wanting to give back. And so now we're doing the free braces giveaway, where we give them opportunities for people to win free braces once a month. All they have to do is go to the microsite and explain how either themselves or the person they're nominated, why they should win. And we're looking for people that really need help. Okay. Does that cost money? Sure. There's cost and time and effort into giving someone braces, whatever. But I think that the long-term gain and the community association completely outweighs the cost associated. So if you're a small entrepreneur and you're trying to get out there and you're trying to do something, you have a product or service that's specific to your community, get out there, attend things, talk, meet people, those types of things. You can do small sponsorships, although I don't agree with sticking your logo on a sign for $500 at the PTA, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's not going to go anywhere. That's
Right.
something in addition to what your actual marketing strategy consists of. That's throwaway money. If you've budgeted it, depending on what your budget is, if you've budgeted some ancillary funds that you can just play with, then that's fine. Don't get caught up in doing that, because you're not going to see an ROI. We just went to a lunch and learn with a company called Cvent, which is a massive company, and they have software that helps people produce things. And I had a really nice lunch. And am I considering using their software? Yeah, I guess so. Am I going to do it tomorrow? Absolutely not. And they probably spent a couple $1,000s feeding me and my counterparts lunch. So again, just be strategic. But as far as the case study is concerned, there's smaller things there. We actually had a self-published author who's a friend of mine, was an executive at Coca-Cola. He retired and decided he wanted to be a children's author. So he came to me and he said, hey, can you help me on my initiatives to sell books? And I said, I've never sold one book. I said, I'll jump on there and we'll figure it out together, and I won't charge you, because we've had the benefit of doing that and sort of figured it out. He had a budget of $500 a month. So we got creative. We sold some books, but again, it doesn't matter what your budget is. Just be very strategic in what you're doing.
Yeah. Tell me more about that. I know in the digital space, I don't even think about anything offline or a lot of the things that you've talked about today. But how would, an author with only, $500 a month, what kind of advice did you give them, or what kind of,
Well, we did. So we sent out some download links and some tokens. So first, you find you need, in my opinion, tribal storytellers, right? So you identify those of your peers that either love you or related to you or whatever, and then become your tribal storytellers in that level. And so he gave out some books. He asked people to share in. He aligned with some school groups and so talked to some teachers, because they were children's books. And it was about his experience. How he did this, I don't know. He was in the technology side for Coca-Cola, so he traveled the world setting up mainframe systems and all types of stuff that's way over my head to keep the data secure, right? And so he talked about his trip to Shanghai, and he talked about his trip to Rio, but he made it from a children's perspective. But again, what he did was, we did some initiatives just on social media, just on Facebook. We did some lookalike targeting. We identified who we thought his target consumer was. We served ads and split tested. It was somewhat successful. But again, a self-publishing author, that's why it's easier now, but selling books is tough, man.
Yeah.
Really tough.
I think what you said about giving the books away, that is marketing. That's really all a book is meant for, is to, position you as the expert and give you something that's basically proof and credibility. And if you can give away books as part of your, uh, funnel, as part of your way to acquire a lead,
Sure.
or like you say, a tribal storyteller, as long as you have a back end to that, you have a way to monetize it after the fact.
Absolutely.
That's really how you should be looking at the book, not as I'm going to be a, New York Times bestseller and get paid big checks to write books.
Sure. Well, there's systems in place now. If you want to be an author and you're an entrepreneur, you can pay the right people to get published. There's different ways around that. You know all about that. So,
yeah, right.
But yeah, you're right. You just have to be, at the end of the day, if you've identified your product or service, you have to be committed, and you have to be fully invested in doing what you're going to do. You can't do it halfway, or else you're going to fail.
I love it. Awesome, man. Well, I hope you guys have taken notes. I would listen back to this, especially any business owners. Those 5 questions, don't brush over them. John talks about this all day, every day. So I know he goes over it fast, but don't sleep on those 5 questions, because the more specific that you are with those, and the more you actually answer those, the more successful your marketing is going to be. The easier it's going to be to say no to shiny objects, or no to, a salesperson that calls you up and says, hey, do you want to be on Yelp, or I can get you to the first page of Google, or, a lot of that noise and distraction can go away, and your budget can be protected if you actually set a budget and you know your target and you know what's your objective, and your expectations are. So awesome, man. I really appreciate the time. I know you're a very busy guy, and you got another meeting coming up here. Before I let you go,
Yep.
I just want to hear a little bit about like the family life. You are, you work in an office, right?
I do. Yeah.
You probably are like many entrepreneurs. Correct me if I'm wrong. We work 80 hours a week for ourselves to avoid working 40 hours a week for somebody else.
Without a doubt.
Tell me a little bit about I think we all are constantly searching for more and more of balance. Every year we get older, every year our relationships grow deeper, every year we have different challenges and events in life, business, as opposed to our in business, in marriage, and family. So how have you, any tips that you have for balancing that out, or at least attempting to balance that out? What's working for you in that world of
everyone I think should say this, but my family's my life. That's the motivation. I'm not old, but I just turned 40 a couple weeks ago. And it wasn't a midlife crisis kind of thing by any stretch of the imagination. But when I first started out, and I asked, like right now, we're trying to fill a digital director position in the agency. And I asked that same question, what motivates you? Some people are accolades motivated. Some people are success motivated. Some people are money motivated. And I was that money motivated, driven person, right? And so that's the reason why I wanted to have my own empire, if you will. I wanted to control my own destiny, if you will. And so I went out and did my own business. With the intention of growing that, making money, so I can get a bigger house and I can nicer car and I can buy more stuff for my kids, right? But it dawned on me. So my wife, as I said earlier in the conversation, is from Poland, and her sister got married last year, and so we spent 2 weeks in Poland last year. And when I came back, my business was still there. It didn't fold shop. Now, thank goodness I have the great support staff. But it didn't fold shop. And I'm like, you know what? I really need to dedicate more time and more effort, more energy on focusing on opportunities like this to spend time with the family. Because when you die, you don't get to take the money with you.
That's right.
Get the money, they're going to be happy. But I think a lot of us get caught up in and I hate to use the term, the hamster wheel, because it's overused, but you're just running and running and running. And yeah, who doesn't like money? Who doesn't like success? Who doesn't, like accolades? But don't lose focus on the reason why you do it. You're passionate. You're doing it because you want to make a better life for yourself or your family, what have you. But in the process of making that better life, enjoy it. Enjoy it. Because I'll tell you, when I was in college, and I'm no different than anyone else, if I could just make $50,000 a year, boom, I'm done.
Yeah.
Make 50. If I could just make 6 figures, I'll be cruising. Then you make that. If I could it never stops. It never stops for the true entrepreneur, the hard worker, or aspirational business owner. It never stops. So don't let it go by. Enjoy it.
So are you putting those things on the calendar now after that trip, or?
Yep. We have a mandated 2 trips a year. One is with my wife and I to remind ourselves why we love each other. That's without the kids. And one is with the kids because they are the biggest source of inspiration and love in my life. It's funny. So this weekend was all kids. So Friday night, so my daughter and son both play basketball. My daughter also plays tennis. So Friday night, I came home from work. We had movie night. I fell asleep about halfway into the movie because that's just what if the lights are dark and I'm laying down, I'm out, right?
Yeah.
And then Saturday morning, it started 8:30, my son's basketball game, 10:30, my daughter's basketball game. We rushed back. We had some lunch. 1 o'clock, the tennis match. Then I took them to see Paddington Bear, which I strongly suggest.
Oh, yeah.
It's a great movie.
Yeah, we saw that this weekend too.
Yeah, Saturday night. It was awesome, right? And then, Sunday, I had tennis and there was a whole bunch of things. But I was talking to my kids. I'm like, you do understand this whole – I've been traveling a lot, so I've really tried to, when given the opportunity, spend as much time with them. But I'm like, guys, you don't understand. Your mother-in-law living in Los Angeles as single people and And ironically enough, this morning, my wife shared something on Facebook. It was from our engagement shoot. We looked totally different a decade ago.
Right.
You know, I'm like, we used to go to Santa Barbara and go wine tasting. It's not because we had a lot of money. It's just because we didn't have bills, you know?
Right.
And so we'd go for the weekend or we'd lay in bed all day and stuff. And I said, listen, I'm not trying to tell you guys this to make you feel bad, because I wouldn't change it for the world. And you are my inspiration. But our priorities have changed. So again, to your question, it's like, you know what you love and love it all the way, and don't lose time on that. Don't waste time not focusing on that, you know?
Awesome, man. Well, I couldn't think of a better way to end this podcast. Look, man, I really appreciate the time. Looking forward to seeing you next week at the Mastermind in Orlando. It's going to be a blast.
Yeah.
So look, guys, like I said, he's got the 5 questions. Go through those. Focus on sales. You can never sharpen that skill set enough, and know what you're working for, like you said. So as you've heard from John's story and ours and a lot of our other interviews as well, you know, business isn't always easy. Life's not always easy. Marriage, family, none of this stuff is easy. It does take work, but we are putting in that work to make it work. So take what you want this week. What you don't want, don't take. And we'll see you next week for another episode of the Middleton Methods podcast.